August 7, 1942, over Guadalcanal. A Japanese Zero fighter attacks a formation of American dive bombers. The rear gunner fires back. A single bullet pierces the Zero's canopy and strikes the pilot in the head. The Americans watch the Zero tip upward, seemingly out of control. The pilot appears dead, slumped in his seat. They count him as a kill and return to their carrier. But Saburo Sakai wasn't dead. Blinded in one eye, bleeding, barely conscious, he flew 560 miles back to base. The flight took nearly 5 hours. 41 years later, Sakai met the gunner who shot him. Harold Jones, the man who nearly killed him. They shook hands, exchanged gifts, and became friends. Saburo Sakai was born in 1916 in Saga Prefecture, Japan. His family descended from samurai but lived as farmers after the Meiji Restoration, forced warriors into civilian life. When his father died and Sakai was 11, his prospects narrowed. At 16, with few options, he enlisted in the Imperial Japanese Navy in 1933. He served as a gunner on battleships Kirishima and Haruna. In 1937, after 3 attempts, he passed the entrance exam for Naval Flight School. The training was the most rigorous in the world. Wrestling matches that could end in injury, swimming tests designed to weed out the weak. Pilots who couldn't meet standards were sent back to regular duty in disgrace. Sakai graduated first in his class. Emperor Hirohito personally presented him with a silver watch. By 1942, Sakai was a combat veteran. He'd flown in China, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, and New Guinea. He'd mastered the A6M0 fighter, light, agile, deadly in the hands of a skilled pilot. Official records credit him with 28 victories. His autobiography claims over 60. Harold Jones was an American sailor serving as a rear gunner on SBD Dauntless dive bombers. The SBD was a sturdy aircraft, heavily armored, designed to attack enemy ships. The rear gunner sat facing backward with twin 30 caliber machine guns, protecting the aircraft from fighters attacking from behind. Jones and his pilot were part of the air group aboard USS Enterprise, one of the American carriers supporting the Marine landings at Guadalcanal in August 1942. The invasion of Guadalcanal was America's first major offensive in the Pacific. The Japanese had built an airfield there. If they completed it, Japanese bombers would threaten Allied supply lines across the South Pacific. The Marines had to take it. On August 7, 1942, as Marines stormed the beaches, Japanese aircraft from Rabaul, 560 miles away, launched counterattacks. Among the pilots was Saburo Sakai. That morning, Sakai and his squadron took off from Rabaul. The flight to Guadalcanal took hours. When they arrived over the island, they engaged American fighters protecting the landing force. Sakai shot down an F-4F Wildcat flown by James Pug Sutherland in an extended dogfight. Both pilots demonstrated exceptional skill. Eventually, Sakai scored hits beneath Sutherland's left-wing route. The Wildcat went down. Sutherland survived and would later become an ace himself. After that engagement, Sakai spotted what he thought was a formation of 8 F-4F Wildcat fighters. He moved in to attack from behind. He was wrong. They weren't Wildcats. They were SBD Dauntless dive bombers, and dive bombers had rear gunners. Sakai realized his mistake only when he pulled close enough for the tail gunners to open fire. All 8 rear gunners engaged him simultaneously. Tracers filled the air. Cannon rounds and machine gun bullets tore into his Zero. Among those gunners was Harold Jones. Jones watched pieces of Sakai's Zero fly off. The canopy shattered. The aircraft tipped nose up and appeared to stall. Through the damaged canopy, Jones caught a glimpse of what looked like a dead pilot slumped in the cockpit. Sakai's Zero climbed away, seemingly out of control. Jones and the other gunners believed they'd killed him. The formation returned to Enterprise and reported the Zero destroyed, but Saburo Sakai wasn't dead. A .30 caliber bullet had pierced his canopy and struck him in the head just above his right eye. The impact destroyed his vision in that eye. For a moment, Sakai considered dying like a kamikaze, diving his damaged Zero into an American ship below, but there were no ships close enough, only jungle and ocean. Then he thought of his responsibilities. He was a section leader. His squadron needed experienced pilots. Japan needed experienced pilots. Dying accomplished nothing, so he decided to fly home. Sakai was 560 miles from Rabaul. His Zero was damaged but still flyable. He was bleeding, half blind, in terrible pain. The flight would take nearly 5 hours. He pointed the nose toward Rabaul and began the longest flight of his life. Ground crew ran to his aircraft expecting to pull a corpse from the cockpit. Instead, Sakai insisted on giving his after-action report to his commanding officer before accepting medical treatment. Only after delivering his report did he collapse. Doctors didn't expect him to survive. The head wound was severe. Infection was almost certain. Even if he lived, he'd never fly again. Saburo Sakai survived. He lost most vision in his right eye permanently. He spent months recovering. But by 1944, he was back in combat, flying one-eyed in a Zero over Iwo Jima. The war ended in August 1945. Sakai retired from the Navy and returned to civilian life. He married, started a printing business, hired fellow veterans who couldn't find work. He became a devout Buddhist and vowed never to kill another living thing, not even a mosquito. For decades, Sakai carried the memory of that day over Guadalcanal. In the 1970s, something unexpected happened. Sakai's autobiography, Samurai, was published in English and became popular in the United States. American pilots and historians read it. Veterans reached out to him. In 1970, Sakai attended a meeting of the American Fighter Aces Association in San Diego. He was the only Japanese pilot there. An American P-51 Mustang ace approached him through a translator. "Please tell Saburo that I read his book twice," the American said. "The feelings that he described were the same that I felt in combat, and I am glad that we can share that understanding." That encounter changed something for Sakai. The Americans didn't see him as an enemy. They saw him as a fellow pilot who'd experienced the same fear, the same adrenaline, the same impossible situations. In the early 1980s, a historian named Henry Sakida began researching the August 7, 1942 engagement over Guadalcanal. He identified the SBD gunners who had nearly killed Sakai. One of them was Harold Jones. Sakida arranged a meeting. In 1983, near Los Angeles, Saburo Sakai and Harold Jones met for the first time since that day 41 years earlier. Sakai brought a gift, his leather flying helmet, the one he'd worn on August 7, 1942. It still bore the bullet hole from Jones's shot. A .30 caliber round had passed through the helmet just above the right eye, exactly where Sakai's wound had been. Jones examined the helmet. The evidence of his marksmanship was undeniable. He'd hit Sakai in the head from a moving aircraft while being attacked by cannon fire from a Zero. The two men shook hands, exchanged stories. Sakai explained his epic flight back to Rabaul. Jones described watching the Zero climb away, believing he'd killed the pilot. They discovered mutual respect. Both were professionals who'd done their jobs. No hatred, no bitterness, just two men who'd faced each other in combat and survived. They became friends, corresponded occasionally, appeared together at veteran gatherings. Years later, when someone asked Sakai about meeting the man who shot him, he responded simply, "To me, the war was never personal." Saburo Sakai spent his final decades as a peace advocate. He spoke at schools and businesses in Japan. His message was always the same: never give up. The same determination that kept him flying 560 miles with a bullet in his head became his theme for civilian life. He visited the United States multiple times, met former adversaries, attended military reunions. He worked briefly as a consultant for Microsoft's Combat Flight Simulator 2 video game, bringing authenticity to the aircraft handling. In his later years, Sakai attracted attention for publicly criticizing Japan's inability to accept responsibility for starting the wars in Asia and the Pacific. This made him unpopular with some Japanese veterans, but he stood by his position. On September 22, 2000, Sakai attended a formal dinner at Atsugi Naval Air Station as an honored guest of the US Navy. During the event, he suffered a heart attack. He died that night at age 84, surrounded by American officers who considered him a friend. Few Japanese veterans attended his funeral. Many resented his friendly relations with former enemies and his criticism of Japan's wartime actions. Harold Jones outlived Sakai by several years, passing away in 2008 at age 88. The friendship between Sakai and Jones represented something important. Two men who tried to kill each other in 1942 shook hands in 1983 and found common ground. They recognized each other as professionals who'd done their duty. No malice, no grudges, just mutual respect between warriors. Saburo Sakai's story reveals something about the nature of combat and the men who fight. The conflict wasn't personal. He didn't hate Americans. Harold Jones didn't hate Japanese. They were both doing their jobs under impossible circumstances. Sakai made a critical mistake attacking those dive bombers from behind, and it nearly cost him his life. But his determination, flying 560 miles half-blind and bleeding, demonstrated exceptional courage and skill. His survival against those odds earned respect from both sides. American pilots who read his autobiography recognized a kindred spirit. They'd felt the same fear, made similar mistakes, experienced the same split-second decisions that meant life or death. The friendship between Sakai and Jones proved that enemies in war don't have to be enemies in peace. They could meet decades later, acknowledge what happened, and move forward with respect rather than hatred. Sakai's post-war message, "Never give up," came directly from his wartime experience. Combat creates adversaries, not eternal enemies. The men who fight can recognize each other's humanity once the fighting stops. Saburo Sakai and Harold Jones proved it. One bullet, one impossible flight, 41 years, and finally, a handshake between two men who'd faced each other when death was the only likely outcome, and both walked away.